Welcome to this video on Blender face rigging using a combination of bones and shape keys. This is probably the only complete guide of this kind on YouTube. This video is part of my course Rigging Isn't Scary, so if you found it randomly, you may be wondering, can I follow it without the rest of the course? The short answer is yes. If you have enough basic rigging knowledge, you can. I'd recommend checking out the video on Shapekey basics if you're new to the subject. So let's dive in. It's a long video, but it covers a lot of ground. Shapekeys offer a number of advantages when it comes to face rigging. They are easier to create, more reliable, and more artistic. And most importantly, they can produce high-quality results. From hobby films to massive Hollywood productions, Shapekeys have been the industry standard in face rigging. Probably the most important consideration now is what shapes should we build? There is no single right answer here, but I'm going to suggest two main approaches. First, if you want to use facial mockup, I recommend looking up the 52 ARKit shapes. You can find detailed guides about them online, and you can sculpt and name your shape keys according to these guides. Then you can use apps to record and retarget the facial animation. That is not the focus of this course, but I wanted to mention it quickly in case it's something you're interested in exploring. The approach we are going to use instead is based on the book Stop Staring, which is a highly respected guide to facial rigging. We'll build the essential shapes recommended in that book. Here is a list of the shapes we'll be building, and you can animate the whole face using shape keys. But for some parts, especially the jaw and eyes, using bones may actually be better. And because the goal of this course is to maximize learning, we are going to go for this approach and learn a lot in the process. And to not just maximize, but supercharge your learning, check out Skillshare, an online learning platform with thousands of classes made specifically for creatives like you. Skillshare is kindly sponsoring this video. My content is all about rigging, so if you're looking to expand your skills with related topics, like animation, or maybe character modeling, or even character design, Skillshare is a great place to explore. I've been diving into Unreal Engine lately, and I like how Skillshare brings together everything from blueprints to visual effects, all in one place and available on demand. Personally, I'm interested in using Unreal for cinematics, not for games. So I'm currently working through some in-depth courses by 3D College. I also have a great playlist of other Unreal classes lined up. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive 20% off their first year of Skillshare. Get started today. And now let's get back to facial rigging with shape keys. So first we are going to focus on rigging the jaw, eyes, and even the tongue using bones. Okay, now we are going to create the bones that we need for the bone portion of our face rig. And that will be a jawbone, 2 eye bones, and a chain of 3 bones for the tongue. Let's go to edit mode, Shift A to create a new bone. I'll call it jaw for now, and place it in the jaw of the character. I'm paying special attention to this point, which will become the pivot point of the jaw. Now I'll create a copy of this bone, place it where the tongue is, and call it tongue 1, and then extrude 2 more bones all the way to the tip of the tongue. And let's name these bones tongue 2 and tongue 3. Create a copy of one of the bones. In global orientation, I'll press S, then Z, then 0 to straighten it. And this will be the eye bone. Let's call it eye.L. I'll go to my mesh, edit mode, and Alt and click on this loop, which is the middle of the eye, then press Shift S, cursor to select it. Back to my rig, select the eye bone, Shift S, selection to cursor, and now the bone is exactly in the middle of the eye. Right click and symmetrize it. Okay, now these bones will be our deforming bones. So let's select all of them. Edit battery name, switch to bones, set name, prefix, DEF dash. and then press M and move them to the DEF collection. Start the DEF collection, and I want to parent these bones logically, so I'll select the jaw and the two eyes and shift select the head, Control P, keep offset, and then select the tongue and shift select the jaw, Control P, keep offset. And as we learned in the chapter about organizing our rig, we want to create copies of these bones and constrain the deforming bones to them. We don't want any parenting between the deforming bones and the rest of the rig. So select the new bones, Shift D, duplicate them, and let's press M and create a new bone collection for now and just call it face. Now in pose mode, we're going to give copy transforms constraint to our deforming bones. Right, we are in the DEF collection now. Then set target to armature, shift select the rest of the bones, pose, constraints, copy constraints, and then I have to set the target of the jaw to be the jaw 001 bone. We'll rename these bones in a second. Okay, that's it for the DEF bones. Let's unstar them. Now all of these bone copies will become MCH bones, so let's name them appropriately. Battery name, bones, find and replace, find DEF and replace with MCH. And then one more time, find .001 and replace with nothing to remove the 001 suffix. And these MCH bones are still parented to the DEF head. That's not a huge problem, but I'm going to parent them to the head bone. So select them, shift select the head bone, edit mode, Control P, keep offset. And the tongue is parented to the MCH jaw, which looks fine to me. Next, we're going to set up the weights. But before that, I'm going to separate the face from the body. It's really cool that we can do that in Blender without too much worry. So I'll just select some polygons roughly and then press Ctrl L, selecting the whole face with the eyes, teeth, and so on. P and separate selection. Next, I'll go to data and delete all shapes. I don't need these shapes for the face. They only affect the body. Then I'll go to edit mode again, select only the face with L and separate it. Then I'll select the eye and separate it, and then the right eye and separate it as well. So now we have the face, each eye, and the teeth as a separate object. Now select the rig, go to pose mode, and let's start the face collection because I forgot to disable the deform option from the MCH bones. Select them all, untick deform, right click, and copy to selected. Next, I'll select all of these face parts, but not the body. Shift select the rig, Control P, and parent with empty groups to add the new groups like jaw, eyes, and so on. Let's go to the eye, select all vertices, go to vertex groups, find the DEF I.L group and click assign. Then on the other eye, select all vertices, find I.R and assign. To weight the jaw, I'm going to select the face, go to edit mode, select one of the central vertices on the lips and press Ctrl+ to expand the selection until I have the whole mouth covered. Then in side view, toggle X-ray and select all jaw vertices like this. Next, I'll go to weight paint, select the jaw vertex group, enable vertex selection. I'll check my paint settings, set blend to add. Strength can be kept to a high value. I don't need mirroring, but I do need auto normalize. And then I'll just paint on these vertices that I selected. I can also enable projected here and disable front faces only to make sure I'm getting all of the vertices, including the occluded ones. Then shift and click to smooth these weights. Now let's test the jaw. That is not too bad. I'm going to open the mouth and go back to weight paint mode, disable vertex selection, and start smoothing the edge of the mouth. This is looking good. We're going to take care of the teeth as well. But let's test the eyes. I need to switch to bounding box center and rotate them around. Okay, it looks like the eyes are also weighted to the head. That is why we're getting slightly weird deformations here. So let's fix it in one of the ways we know. I'll select a vertex here, then press L to select all other vertices, set DEF head to 0, and press copy. And let's do the same for the other eye. Now the rotation of the eye is good, but the problem is that we have half an eye. So at a very extreme rotation, we kind of see the end of the eye. So I'll go and do some quick modeling here. I'll just extrude some edges and scale them. That will be enough. Same on the other side. Okay, now the eyes are looking fine. The teeth are already fully weighted to the head. So what I need to do is weight the lower part of the teeth to the jawbone. Let's select the teeth first. From this menu, remove from all groups, find the EF jaw, and click Assign. And I can press H to hide them. Now I'm going to select a central vertex on the lower part of the gums and start pressing Ctrl+ to expand the selection to about here. Then I'll remove from all groups, select the DEF jaw group, and assign. In weight paint mode, I can smooth a bit. I can set smooth to an even higher value. Okay, now all we have to do is take care of the tongue. Let's go to edit mode, select the central vertex, and start expanding the selection to about here, and then remove from all groups. Next, I'll go to my rig, and let's just isolate the rig and the teeth. On the rig, start the DEF collection, go to pose mode, and select the tongue bones. Oops, I want only the DEF. And then I'm going to select the tongue bones. Go to object mode, shift select the teeth, go to weight paint mode, enable vertex selection, and go to weights assign automatic from bones. This will assign the selected tongue vertices to the selected tongue bones. Disable vertex selection and check the weights. Some smoothing will probably be needed. But this was an efficient and precise way to add weights to these teeth. Let's unstart the DEF. And now I can test the deformations of the tongue. Some smoothing will be needed here. By the way, if your teeth are missing textures like mine here, select the teeth object, go to shading, select the gums material, find the UV map node, select map 1 from it, and just plug it into all of the textures. Okay, now that everything is weighted nicely, we can start building some mechanisms. Let's unstart DEF and reset the rig. Now we'll create an eye setup similar to that in level 2. Let's go to edit mode, select the two eye bones, Shift D, duplicate them, and move them on the y-axis. I'll name this bone eyetarget.l and the other one eyetarget.r. In pose mode, select one eye target and the respective eye, Ctrl-Shift-C dump track. Now the eye bone points to the target. Let's do the same on the other side. Select the eye target, Shift-select the eye, Ctrl-Shift-C dump track. Now in edit mode, duplicate one of the bones, move it on the x-axis, and under item set head to 0 and tail x to 0. That places this bone exactly in the center of the world. Let's make it a little bit bigger and call it eye master and parent the two targets to it. Now this bone moves both eyes, but we can also move the individual targets. This eye setup may actually be a little bit better and a little bit easier than the one we did in level 2. The jaw we can just rotate around if we wanted to, but here is something else we can do. I'll go to edit mode, with individual origins, scale the jaw a little bit bigger, then select the tail of the jawbone, press E and Z to extrude another bone, Alt P and clear parent, and let's name this bone jaw master. In pose mode, select the jaw master, shift select the jawbone, Ctrl-Shift-C dump track. Now I have this jaw control, which I can control by moving instead of rotating. And before I forget, let me parent this jaw master to the head. Ctrl-P, keep offset. Here, when I rotate the head, I'm noticing some problems. It seems to be because some of the surrounding bones are affecting the jaw area. So let's go to the rig. Start a DEF collection. Shift select the face mesh. Go to weight paint mode. Alt and click on the jaw to select it. And with a paintbrush set up like this, we'll just control and click to paint out the influence. The chest bone also affects the jaw a little bit and also the shoulders. So I'm just removing all of these unnecessary weights. And the problem is solved. Now shift select the head and smooth a little bit in this area. And also a little bit of smoothing for the jaw. And this should be good. Our jaw and eyes are looking good. Let's give them some shapes. For the eye master, I'm going to use the rectangle and orient it. For the eye targets, let's use a circle. Looking good. And for the jaw, we could use another circle. You'll notice that you can kind of disconnect the circle, but we can use override transform and make it stick to the MCH jaw. At first that will place it all the way here, but then I can slide it on the y-axis. And now the control will look a lot more stable. Next, we are going to work on the tongue, and this is going to be very cool because we are going to implement some squash and stretch mechanisms, which we haven't done so far. Let's reset the rig and isolate it. Go to edit mode and I'll hide the jaw so that I can focus on the tongue bones. I'll select the connection between the first and second tongue bones, press E and Z and extrude a new bone, and Alt P and clear the parent. And let's name this bone tongue control 1. Then with vertex snapping, I'm going to duplicate this bone and snap it at the next intersection, and then Shift D and snap this copy at the tip of the tongue. Let's name these bones tongue control 2 and tongue control 3. Now in pose mode, I'll hide the jaw. And I'm going to make this main tongue bone stretch to the position of the control bone. So I'll select the control bone, shift select the tongue bone, control shift C, and for squash and stretch, we have a constraint called stretch to. So let's enable it. And now if I move this bone, you'll see the constrained bone squashing and stretching. The remaining bones are also squashing and stretching with it because of parenting. So let's just repeat this setup for the remaining bones. With this control selected, shift select the tongue bone, control shift C, stretch to, and one more time here. And now we have this stretchy chain. This is the basis for squash and stretch chains in Blender. Now let's go out of local mode and test this. So now if I open the jaw, the tongue is not moving with it. So let's isolate again, go to edit mode, Alt H to unhide the jaw, select all of these control bones, shift select the jaw, control P, keep offset. Now the control bones will move with the jaw and therefore the tongue will move with the jaw. And now I can grab these controls here and I can pose the tongue in pretty much any shape I want. And this is a nice setup, but we can improve it a little bit. Let's isolate again, reset the rig, select the tip control and shift select the next control, control shift C and give it copy transforms. Switch target and owner to local space. And let's do the exact same setup for the other control. Control shift C, copy transforms, local space and local space. Now when I move this control, the other ones move with it. And now if I just play with the influence, I'll set this one to 0.5 or so, and the next one to 0.25. And this gives me this nice automatic stretching of the tongue. Okay, so that means that I can pose this tongue by just moving this one single control. Occasionally, I may want to move the other ones. I should switch to a different mix mode, such as after original. Okay, this gives us really good control over the tongue. Let's set up the shapes. For the tip, I'm going to use the curvy shape and adjust it. And for the additional controls, I'll use the sphere. Let's set some bone colors as well. And make the wire width thicker. The eye bones may be too close, which means that the eyes react too quickly. So let's go to edit mode and offset them a bit. Yeah, this feels nice. And with that, our bone setup for the face is done. Let's move on to the shape keys. We'll create a highly optimized set of 16 or so shapes. But the cool thing about these limited number of shapes is that they will allow you to create lip sync and show major human emotions. And they also work for a variety of styles, from realistic to cartoony and anime. Again, these shapes are based on the book Stop Staring, with slight modifications from me just so that we can learn some cool tricks. So step one, let's create these shapes. And some of them need to be split into left and right side, but we'll model and sculpt the shapes with symmetry first, and then I'll show you a trick how to get the right side and left side separated automatically. So I'll select the face model, go to data, press the plus button to create the basis key, and one more time to create our first key. And first we'll be working on a shape called mouth wide. And before we start, let me share the main modeling techniques I'll be using, because creating the shapes is just a lot of vertex pushing. So there will be a lot of time lapses where I'm just using the same techniques over and over. I can tweak the mesh in edit mode, And when I do, I'll definitely want to use symmetry. So let's go to End Panel Tool, and we can enable mirror here. And if our character is perfectly symmetrical, just moving one side will also affect the other. And of course, we don't want to move one vertex at a time. So a big help here is the proportional editing tool. When I enable it, I can move large portions of the mesh at the same time. Now, right now, this is too much, so I need to scroll the mouse wheel up to lessen the effect to only the mouth area. By default, proportional editing will affect all vertices near the selected one. But if you press Alt-O, then you can make proportional editing affect only connected vertices. And that can be very useful in areas like the mouth, so that I can only affect the upper lip and not the lower lip. So that's more or less all I'm going to be doing in edit mode. But actually, most of the time, I'll use sculpt mode. Sculpt mode is really nice because even if the topology of your character is not symmetrical, the symmetry in sculpt mode will still work. Don't forget that if you want to create a shape key in sculpt mode, you have to make sure that the active shape key is set to 1. If it's set to 0, then nothing will happen when you try to sculpt. So set it to 1. And I'll mainly be using the move brush. Occasionally, I may want to lightly smooth something, but by default, the smooth brush is way too strong. So activate the smooth brush, and by default, it will be set to 0.7 or so. I'll set it to 0.2. It kind of depends on your mesh density. My character is quite low poly, so I need a very low value here. The default behavior of the grab brush is that it will move unconnected geometry. If you want to avoid this, enable the auto-masking topology option. And now, as long as you're not too close to the other surface or you don't use too big of a brush, this will only affect the connected geometry. Other than that, I might use inflate and the crease brush occasionally. And I believe those are all of the techniques that I'll be using while creating shape keys. Oh, and one more tip, go to End Panel View and set focal length to something much higher than 50. Something around 85 or so. It will give you a more natural and less distorted view of your character. One final tip that has nothing to do with Blender, get a little mirror that you can set on your desk and observe your own face while creating the shapes. Now let's hide the rig and disable wireframe. And we can start sculpting our first shape, mouth wide. Okay, so mouth wide will be slightly special. It's not a real expression. It's just the mouth stretching sideways without really creating a smile or any other special emotion. So of course I can stretch it sideways, but keep in mind that the teeth have a horseshoe shape. So the mouth doesn't really just go sideways. It also moves back at the same time. In solid shading and using X-ray, we can actually see the teeth. Although I won't be using that. So from this angle, I'm going to stretch the mouth like this. Something like this. Don't worry too much about this initial shape. We'll very likely have to go back and fix these shapes as we try to combine them with other shapes. And speaking of combining shapes, the next shape will be the smile, and we are going to do something special with it. We are going to use this initial mouth wide shape as a base for the smile. So let's create a new shape, call it mouth smile, and set it to 1, and do not set mouth wide to 0 yet. Make sure that mouth smile is enabled, and let's try to shape this mouth into something that looks more like a smile. So I'll mainly raise the corners of the mouth to make it more like a smile, but I'm not going to affect the wideness of the mouth too much, because that is controlled by the mouth wide. Also, I should set my auto-masking topology off because I don't want to open and close the lips here. I just want to pull the entire mouth up and down. Something like this. And an important point is that the smile will also affect the cheeks. It will raise and kind of puff them out a little bit. So I'll raise the cheeks slightly, and then with the inflate brush, puff them out a little bit. Also all the way here, and that will make the smile a little bit more genuine. It won't look very genuine yet because it's just a mouth, but really a genuine smile involves showing a little bit of the teeth and also squinting a little bit. Just the smile will look kind of weird. We have to combine it with the wide, but when we build the interface for the face, you'll see how it will be very easy to control. Okay, so this was a special technique, and we kind of started with the most difficult thing in this section. Okay, now let's set wide and smile all the way to 0 and create a new shape, and that will be our mouth frown. Set it to 1 and sculpt it. Frown is a lot easier to create than the smile. I guess as humans, we pay a lot more attention to what a genuine smile is, whereas with the frown, if we just move the edges of the mouth down a little bit, it kind of looks like it. One thing you can do is use the inflate brush to puff out the area just below and around the edge of the mouth. Or you could use another brush as well. Oh wow, this is way too strong. Okay, this will be our frown. Let's set frown to 0 and create the next shape. Mouth narrow, which will be kind of the opposite of our mouth wide. Set it to 1 and start sculpting. So as the name suggests, we'll make the mouth narrower. The lips are a muscle, they have volume. So when the mouth becomes narrower, the lips will kind of become a little bit taller and they will poke out. So this shape can also be called pucker or a kissy mouth. And the mouth gets this kind of diamond shape. I can use topology masking to separate the lips very, very slightly. Okay, let's move on. Set all shapes to 0, and next we'll do upper lip up. This shape raises the upper lip of the character, and for it, definitely use auto masking, or in edit mode, use the hollow circle for proportional editing. And I want to move the upper lip like this, exposing the teeth up to around the gums. Okay, this should be a good base. We might tweak it later, but let's move on to the next shape, which is the opposite, lower lip down. Which will be something like this, again, lower lip going down to the gum level. Next, we'll do upper lip in. And for this shape, I'm going to use edit mode. I think it's a little bit easier because I have to rotate the upper lip and kind of tuck it in under the upper teeth. So I'll select these vertices and use proportional editing. I'll rotate the lip and then move it around here under the teeth. Now here in edit mode, I'll select the lower lip and hide it, and then go to sculpt mode. That way I can keep sculpting the upper lip without affecting the lower lip. Here I really want to focus only on the upper lip. Okay, so the upper lip will go in and it will look very, very thin from the outside. Let's press Alt-H. And yeah, this is more or less what I'm looking for. Let's make the next shape, which will be lower lip in. So the same thing for the lower lip. It's a good idea to test both upper lip and lower lip in. They should look good together. If you want to edit them in this state, make sure that you are selecting the shape that you actually want to edit. So now I'm editing the lower lip and now the upper lip. Okay, these shapes are important for various things, especially for lip sync, for sounds like F, B, M, and so on. And hey, we are all done with the lip shapes. Here we may want to reorder these shapes so that the upper lip shapes are next to each other. So I'll select upper lip in and press the up arrow. That will move it up, and it's just for organizational purposes and it doesn't change anything in our shapes. Here might be a good idea to test some of the shapes. Let's try to create a smile and also open the mouth, and that should start to create a more natural smile. If it doesn't, you can select the shape that you need to tweak. Here, I believe it's the smile that needs to be tweaked a little bit. And I can tweak it until it looks good with this combination of shapes that I expect to use. I may want to tweak the wide a little bit to make it follow the teeth a little bit more, and the smile to go up a little bit more. And this kind of tweaks will make a big difference in the final quality of your shapes because they need to combine well together. But for now, we'll move on to other shapes. First, we'll create the closing of the eyes. So let's create a new shape. Call it eyes closed. And here we can use masking to mask out the brows. If masking is not visible, you can enable it here. All right, and now with the grab brush, I can start closing the eyes. When the eye closes, it's mostly the upper eyelid that does the closing, but there is a little bit of lower eyelid movement as well. You can also make this into two separate shapes. That is up to you. Here, I'll keep it a little bit simpler and use one shape to close both the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid. I'll smooth out the wireframe a little bit and make sure the eye closes all the way. Okay, good. This should do. I'll press Alt-M to remove the mask. We're very close now. We just need some brows shapes and a couple of other subtle shapes around the face. The next shape will be brows up. And here again, I'll use masking to mask the eyelids because I only want to affect the eyebrows. And now we'll start raising the eyebrow, favoring the outside, because there will be another shape favoring the inner side of the eyebrow. With the eyebrow, it's important to keep in mind that there is the skull under it, so take that into consideration. The next shape will be brows down. And sometimes with these kind of opposite shapes, you can actually set range min to -1 and set the value to -1 and see if it works well. In this case, I don't think that is what we're looking for because there is skull here and the brows kind of need to go sideways a little bit. So I'll set this to 0 and range min to 0. And let's create the next shape and call it brows down. Set it to 1 and sculpt it. something like this. Next, we'll do the inner part of the brows. Again, they can go up and down. And the inner part of the brows actually convey a lot of emotion. You can see by just creating this shape, our character starts to look kind of sad. And here, I think we may be able to use the range min to create the inner down shape. So let's set range min to -1 and set the value to -1. And again, see how right away the character kind of looks angry. So if that looks perfect to you, you could just use the negative value, but here we're going to do something else. Make sure that only brow inner up is set to -1 and everything else is 0. And then go to this menu and create new shape from mix. This will basically duplicate whatever shapes we have into a new shape. Now I'll set brows inner up to 0, set range min to 0 as well, and enable this new shape. And that will be the base for my brows inner down. So now I'll just tweak it a little bit. Having it as a separate shape gives me more control. Okay, something like this. The next shape is brow squeeze. This is a subtle shape in which the brows kind of come together, and it tends to convey thinking. You may not see much of a difference here for two reasons. First, the shape is subtle, but second, it's not so much the movement of the brows, as there are some subtle wrinkles that appear on the character. So we'll finish up with two more subtle shapes. One will be called sneer, and that is probably exactly as you imagine it, kind of moving the nostrils up and conveying disgust or anger. So raise the nose and the surrounding areas, and maybe puff them out a little bit. And finally, we'll do a squint. In the squint, the lower eyelids will move up, but actually this is driven by moving the facial muscles below the eyelid up. You may want to create a crease here and puff out the lower eyelid a little bit. Here I'm dealing with very little polygons, so I cannot really do that. A little bit of a squint combined with a smile can give a more genuine smile. And these will be our basic shapes. Of course, keep tweaking your shapes as much as needed until you get the kind of results that you want. I'm sure many of you are better artists than me, and you will achieve better results by spending more time tweaking your shapes. But now we'll move on to creating the left and right side of the shapes that need that. And that is extremely easy to do. Shapekeys have a vertex group, so we'll just create a vertex group splitting the face into two halves, and we'll use it to extract left side and right side for each shape. So let's see which shapes will need that. All mouth shapes except for narrow will need it. So I'll name each shape with the .l suffix first. Actually, the lower lip and upper lip in will not need symmetry, so we'll leave them without a suffix. Eyes closed and the brow shapes will need .l, but the squeeze does not need it. Sneer will need it, and squint also. Okay, now let's go to edit mode, isolate the face, use solid shading mode and X-ray, and select exactly one half of the mesh. By the way, an easy way to do this is to select a central point, go to select side of active. So this selected the left side of the face. So I'll create a new vertex group and call it Shapekey left. With a weight of 1, click assign. Now press Ctrl I and Ctrl plus to select the whole right side, create a new shape, call it Shapekey right, and assign. Then switch to weight paint mode. And for each of these shape keys, I'll go to weights, smooth, and iteration can be 1 or 2 at most. Let's do the same here. Okay, now we can go to the shape keys. And for each shape that needs left and right side, here are the steps that we are going to take. Enable that shape key and only that shape key. From this menu, use New Shape from Mix. And because we only have one shape activated, this will essentially duplicate the shape key. Let's move the two copies together. Copy this name, paste it here, and replace it with .r. And in the .l1, use vertex group, Shapekey left. And for the right one, we'll use Shapekey right. And now the .r shape key controls the right side of the face, and the .l shape key controls the left side of the face. So let's repeat this for all shapes that need left side and right side. I'm sure there must be a script somewhere to do this automatically, but in this course we're doing everything manually in order to learn. One pitfall to watch out for is that you may just select a shape and try to duplicate it using New Shape from Mix, but that is not how it works. What you duplicate is the exact shape that you have active, so you have to set only one shape to one and then do New Shape from Mix. Good job going through this whole process. Now we are getting to the exciting part, creating the face interface, which will allow us to tweak and animate these shapes in a very intuitive way. While it is possible to animate by just dragging these sliders here, it's really not a great idea because usually we'll be animating the rig. So if I want to tweak the shape keys, I would have to switch to the head model and tweak them here. So what else can we do? Another possibility would be to use properties again, but as the number of properties grows, this area gets cluttered and it will get almost as difficult to work with that as with the shape key values here. So instead, we are going to create an interface using bones right inside our rig. Let's go to edit mode for the rig and create a new bone. This will be just a quick demonstration. Let's call this bone Shapekey control or something like that. And let's say that by sliding this bone on the x-axis, we want to activate the mouth smile shape key. We could right click on the X location value, copy as new driver, go to our head, go to mouth wide L, right click and paste as new driver. Now if I slide this bone on the x-axis, you'll see how it activates the shape. And if I give it a circle widget and lock most of the transforms, I could also duplicate this bone and shape it like this and lock all of its axes. And now this whole thing becomes like a bit of an interface. We could also free up the y-axis and copy it as a new driver and paste that into the smile. Now moving this control up will activate the smile, and sideways makes the mouth wider. So that's definitely a step in the right direction, but instead of creating these joystick-like interfaces, which are quite popular and you could use them for other purposes, in fact, you could replace these properties here with sliders like that. So they're definitely useful, but for the face, we could add bones right in the face, in the area that they affect, and make controllers out of that, and that will be so much more intuitive. So this was just to show you the basic principle and a way to create rig interfaces. I hope it's useful. But now we're going to delete these bones and we're going to start creating the actual interface right on the face. So let's start by placing the 3D cursor at the mouth corner and Shift A and create a new bone. With individual origins, scale it down. And let's name all of these interface bones with the SK prefix. So something like SK mouth corner.l. And this bone is going to control the wide, smile, and frown of the character. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this bone, place the cursor around here, Shift S, selection to cursor. And let's name this bone SK upper lip up.l. And I'll place another one at the lower lip. And I can press Alt F to flip this bone. This will make it so moving it in this direction gives us positive Y values for the bone. And that will make it slightly easier to set up the driver for the shape. This is lower lip down.l. Now I'll place the 3D cursor here in the center and go to View, 3D cursor, and place it exactly at X0 and press Shift A to add another bone. Scale it down, bring it out a bit, and let's call this one just mouth. Okay, now I'll add a bone here for the sneer. So let's call it SK sneer.l. One at the eyelid for closing the eyelid. One bone in the middle of the brow. I named it just brow.l. And one at the inner edge, and let's name it inner brow.l. For the brow squeeze, I want a bone right here in the center between the eyebrows. So I'll duplicate this bone, right click to cancel the movement, and then bring this bone up because it's already in the center. And that will be a brow squeeze. I'm checking what other bones we need. We need one around here for the squint. And two more bones, one at the upper lip for the upper lip in action. And one below it for the lower lip in. And I'll flip this bone because for this shape, I'm going to want to move the bone down. Okay, I believe this will do. So let's select all bones that need a right counterpart. Right click and symmetrize them. And then select all of these new bones. And parent them to the head bone. Actually, the bones at the corner and at the lower lip will move down with the jaw, so I'm going to parent them to the jaw. It will make our rig more intuitive. Now I'll select all of these new bones and give them a simple circle shape. I'll make the shapes a little bit smaller. And only the mouth one, I'm going to make a little bit bigger and stretch it a bit like this to indicate that this is the mouth control. I forgot to add the .l suffix to the squint, so now I'm fixing that and symmetrizing the bone. Okay, again, let's start with the most difficult area, and that will be the mouth corner. I'll go to my head mesh and remove these drivers by right-clicking and choosing Delete Driver. And now let's add a driver for mouth white.l, and again right-click and open the driver editor. I'll set my object to be the armature, and the bone that will be driving this is the mouth corner.l. You can select this bone, enable the move gizmo, and switch to local orientation, and that will tell you the axis of the bones. So for the stretch, we want to use the x-axis, and for the smile, the y-axis, and for the frown, we are going to actually use the negative y-axis. So as you see, we have a lot less controls than shape keys. That is because we can control multiple shape keys with one control, which is not only efficient, but also very intuitive. So X location here is good. We just need to switch to local space. And now we can actually test the shape. Now the problem is, if you zoom in, you'll see that the driver already works, but I need to move this control a couple of meters to activate the whole shape. You should already know how to solve this. In fact, you should know two ways. One will be to multiply the variable. Here we're going to need a large value like 100. So now moving the control to here activates the full shape key. I may want to go to 120 or so. Yeah, this is looking nice. But instead of this, we could move the shape to around here, which is where I want the full shape key to be activated. And then I'll go to the face, set this expression to just var, and then grab the second keyframe and press G and Y and start moving it up. And I'm going to have to move it up quite a bit. I can do G, Y, and then type 100 on the numpad. And that wasn't quite enough, so I'll keep moving it to here. Okay, good. Okay, now we can go ahead and set up smile.l. I can actually copy this driver and paste it into smile.l. And then open the driver editor. And for smile.l, I just want to switch type to Y location. And it will probably work right away. So now I can stretch the mouth and enable a smile. And for the frown, I should be able to just copy this driver, paste it into frown.l. Now, if we test this, something weird will happen, and I recommend stopping the video and trying to figure out what happened. Okay, so what happened is we have the exact same driver for smile.l and frown.l, and when I move this control up, it activates both shape keys. But smile and frown are not supposed to be added together. It's super easy to fix this. Just open the driver editor, and for frown.l, set the expression to -var. Now moving the bone up in the Y direction produces positive values, so it only activates the smile. For the frown, it actually produces a -1 value, but our frown is clipped between 0 and 1. So for anything less than 0, we just get a 0 value. And vice versa for the frown, and that is how we got this intuitive mouth corner control. Now there are some things that we may want to change. This control is not meant to be rotated or scaled, and it only moves on the Y and Z axis. So we're going to lock all of these axes. In fact, let's select all of these controls. And I'm going to hold Alt and lock these axes. If alt-clicking doesn't work for you, as always, you can use right-click and copy all to select it. Now all of these are locked, so as I work with these controls, I'll unlock only the transforms that I want. And again, let's select all of these controls. And finally, I'll shift select the corner one. And I'll give it a limit location constraint. Tick affect transform and choose local space. And I'll also activate all limits. And then go to pose, constraints, copy constraints to selected bones. So now all of the bones will have this constraint. And then as I set them up, I'm going to tweak the settings. So now for this bone, I want to unlock X and Y, and a value of 0.54 or so activates the full wide. So let's set maximum to this value. Y of 0.8 or so activates the full smile. So let's paste it into the maximum Y value. And minus the same value will be perfect for the frown. And now if I activate this constraint, which I had disabled, the control will only move within these limits. If I go to edit mode and symmetrize this bone, it will actually symmetrize the constraint, which gives me perfect limits for the bone on the other side. So let's just set up the right side of the face in the same way. I'll just copy and paste the driver. And edit it to use the opposite bone. This will almost work, but the x-axis is inverted on the other side. So for the mouth wide.r, I need to set the expression to -var. Okay, this was by far the most difficult setup. Now let's set up some of the easier ones, like the mouth, sneer, and so on. They will just move in a single direction. So we'll set up upper lip up together, and then as a challenge, you'll do the rest yourself. Let's add a driver, open the driver editor. Object is the armature. The bone is upper lip up.l. Type Y location. If you need to check, go to your bone and unlock the location transforms. So here I want the Y. So type Y location and local space. I'll set Y maximum to 0.05. Or 0.8 or so. Move the control all the way up. And then move this keyframe as much as needed. Okay, if I just symmetrize this bone, copy this driver, paste it into the .r counterpart, and make it be driven by the .r bone, then we'll have the opposite side set up. Okay, now this big mouth bone is special, so just leave it aside, but try to set up the remaining controls yourself. They just need to move in a single direction, and they control exactly the shape that they're close to. I recorded the whole process of me setting up all of these controls, but I don't think it's going to be very useful to you, so I'll just show you what I did. I did set up all of these controls, and most of them, the lips ones, the sneer, the squint, the eye blink, and the brow squeeze, are set up exactly as the upper lip up control, which means that each one drives a single shape key and it drives it using its Y value. So for example, for the lower lip down, if I open the driver editor, I can use the search here, by the way, to filter my drivers. So if I look at the lower lip down driver, I'm driving it using a bone with a similar name. It's this bone using its Y location in local space. And the expression is simply var. And that is because I flipped my bones so that they are oriented in the direction they are supposed to move. If your bones weren't flipped and they're pointing in the opposite direction, then you may have to set your expression to -var, for example, but I don't need to. Okay, so it's the same for all of these other controls that move in a single direction. The brows are slightly more complicated. Moving this control up activates the inner brow up, and moving it down activates inner brow down. So this is very similar to the mouth corner with the smile and frown. In the mouth corner, we also have a wide, so the brows are similar to the mouth corner, but slightly less complicated. But if we look at the brows inner up, you'll see that they're driven by the inner brow bone, which is this one, and the expression is var. And if we look at the inner brow down, they're driven by the same bone, same axis and local space. The only difference is that the expression is -var. So that moving this control down will activate this shape key. And it's the same for the other brow control. And I also locked any axis that I don't want to use for these controls. And I also gave them a limit location constraint with affect transforms and owner set to local space. And then I just set the necessary minimum and maximum values so that the controls do not leave their intended space. Okay, now let's set up the mouth control, and it is supposed to drive the mouth narrow shape. I'm going to use the local X scale axis to drive this shape. So let's lock Y and Z, and also add limit scale to this bone. Activate all limits and affect transform and switch to local space. And for limit scale, we have to set maximum to 1 because the default scale is always 1. And I want to scale this bone to about 0.5, and that should trigger the mouth narrow shape. So let's set minimum to 0.5. Now it's just a matter of setting up the driver. Find mouth narrow, right click, add driver. Object is armature, and the bone will be SK mouth. We're going to use X scale in local space. Now here the expression will be slightly more complicated. Again, the default scale value is 1, so in the default state of the bone, we get the full shape key. This is definitely not what we want. To invert the value of 1, I can change the expression to 1 minus var. This sets the default value to 0, and as I scale this bone down to about 0.5, it will become 1 minus 0.5, so 0.5. So it is triggering the shape key, but not all the way. Let's go back to the driver. So we'll place this expression in parentheses and multiply it by 2. That way, when I reach the scale of 0.5, it will be multiplied by 2, which is 1. So now just pressing the S key creates this shape. Just for fun, I'll create some additional shapes for the mouth. So let's go to the face, create a new shape key, and call it mouth left. And I'll select the whole mouth, enable proportional editing, and here disable mirror. And I want to move the mouth to the side like this. We may want to sculpt it a little bit as well. Okay, so this gives us this sideways movement of the mouth. Now, here is another way to mirror a shape key. I'm going to have the mouth left activated and everything else set to 0. Create a new shape from mix, which creates a copy of mouth left. Set this to 0, and let's call this one mouth right. Set it to 1. Then select mouth right, go to this menu and mirror the shape key. And that will give me mouth right. There is this vertex which probably wasn't quite symmetrical, so I'll just smooth it a little bit. And that is mouth right now. I'll create one more shape, call it mouth up. And in edit mode, I'll move the whole mouth area or the lips up. Sculpt it a bit. And now let's set range min for mouth up to -1. And this should work for our mouth down. So let's name this shape mouth up down and set the value to 0. Now I can make this mouth control these additional mouth shapes. So I'll unlock its X and Y location values. And I'll have to set the maximum X to 0.01 or so, and also the Y, and the minimum to -0.01. Now I can move this control within these limits. Let's add drivers. Mouth left will be driven by the SK mouth bone. X location makes sense for left and right, and Y location for the up and down movement. Space to local space. And I'll just multiply this expression by 100. Because my maximum movement value is 0.01, multiplying by 100 will give me a value of exactly 1. So now moving this control left creates the mouth left expression. Let's copy this driver, paste it into mouth right, and edit this expression to be -var multiplied by 100. And this gives us this mouth movement that you often see in facial motion capture. Let's paste the driver into mouth up-down as well. This time we want the Y location in local space to drive the control. And this sets it up right away. Now, I think the full shape key is a little bit too extreme for this semi-realistic character. So I'm going to change the expression for mouth up-down to var multiplied by 80 or so. So this shape can be triggered only up to 80%. Okay, this made the tutorial a little bit longer again, but I think we managed to learn some cool new tricks. I really want this to be the one tutorial that you can just watch, and you'll know all there is to know about shape keys. Here I decided to tweak the weight paint around the mouth just a little bit. You really need to test how the different shape keys interact with each other, and also how the bone deformations on the jaw combine with the shape keys. And you may need to tweak the weight paint a little bit or the shapes a little bit to get the exact shapes that you want. But I think even with this relatively limited number of shapes, this face is capable of achieving a lot of natural expressions, lip sync, and so on. But at the same time, it is just a solid base that you can keep building upon, and you can add any shapes that you feel your character needs. And with that, you completed Rigging Isn't Scary. I hope it has been a great learning experience. So what's next? Would you like to keep learning rigging with me? I'll release videos about that soon, so stay subscribed with the all notification option. I'll talk to you soon, but feel free to let me know in the comments below what kind of rigging topics you would like to explore in the future.